All right. John, can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. I know that Dirk is having some connectivity issues, so maybe let's take a couple of minutes for that to resolve. I see we already have some guests in here. Cool.
Man, I can't believe my Mac is too old for backgrounds.
I think we should probably do something about that.
Of all the things, it's funny. I kept waiting for something to like push my Mac into obsolescence. Because the 5 years is the longest I've had a computer, like especially a day-to-day one. Like I'm on this thing every single day, and it's backgrounds. That's the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah. I mean, backgrounds are fun, but then at some point you get tired of them.
Yeah. The funny thing is I just ignored the whole trend up until today.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a couple of minutes more before the official launch. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah. See if we got any last minute questions popping up. All right. Rick Courier's in here excited. Glad to hear. I know Rick Courier got a bunch of good questions coming up. John is not Hagen. I can answer that question pretty quickly. Hagen is a separate person from John.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
It's incredible.
All right, Dirk, you're on. It's good.
Yeah. Well, typical thing. Internet went down exactly at the right moment.
Murphy's laws. They work in the real world and in the metaverse everywhere.
Actually, I'm in Silicon Valley. You could think that internet works here, right?
2020 is, yeah, it's actually a beta. It's a beta of reality. Hopefully we can do 2021 as the real thing. All right. Looks like we got 1 more minute.
I see like a comment about Spark logo looking nice. But keep in mind, these are just blueprints. We're still working on it. So this may not be how it ends up looking.
Yeah. One of the more controversial questions over at Upland HQ is, what to name Spark, and now what does Spark look like, right?
Yeah.
We have many people working around the clock trying to determine what exactly Spark should look like. It's that important.
Yeah, it is definitely shiny. That's for sure.
All right. It is 10 a.m. PT, and we are going to get started with the AMA. We've got all the questions loaded up here from the Discord and ranked accordingly, grouped by subject. So originally, just so everybody knows, we had planned to focus an entire AMA on Spark. Since when we released that article, it made its way around the internet. We got a lot of great feedback on it, got a lot of views on it, and just had dozens of questions coming in. But the more time passed, the more we realized that Uplanders had a lot of different questions. about where we were at with a number of different topics, from franchises to collections in New York, to building, to some specific mechanics that we've talked about in the past. And so we just wanted to give the community an opportunity to ask any questions they like. And we're going to go through those questions now and just do our best job to address both the question directly, but then also the spirit of the question, so that the whole Upland community can better understand how we're thinking about these issues, and to understand also how much thought and how much effort goes into making the plans that we make, when from collections to releasing new cities to the mechanisms behind Spark. All right. And so with that, we'll get started with the first question in a category of its own. We have one question about franchises. And after that question was asked, it just jumped to the top couple of questions on all of Discord. And so Dirk, this question goes towards you. Has there been any progress on the franchise system? A lot of people interested in this one.
Yeah, I saw us 2 or 3 times coming in. So hi also for myself, to everyone, to the community here. Concerning the franchise, so what's the reason why we have this idea of a franchise? Because eventually, once Upland is going to grow out of San Francisco, New York, and Fresno, we're going to launch in other cities around the world. And I mean, we know San Francisco, we know New York, Fresno a little bit now, but as you can imagine, it gets more difficult when we go into cities which we have never been in. So we truly believe in supporters who can help us to launch cities together, because they know these areas better. Just think about collections, right? What could go into collection and so on. But having said that, so when you want to become a franchisee, that means you have a different role than a typical player would have. And but if you're interested in doing this, it also means maybe there's opportunities to do some upfront investments, but that's completely outside of the game. You can already sign up on the website today for the franchise concept. We're constantly looking at the applicants, and it has also to do how and where we want to roll out, and we'll start reaching out to you sometime next year, but it's going to take some more time until this really launches.
All right, great answer. We just jumped right into the deep end there, Dirk. I appreciate that answer. What we didn't do is a basic round of introductions. I apologize for that, but my name is John, and I'm a product manager at Upland. I work on the live operations, so the live events that you guys have in the game. I work very closely with the Edan on a lot of those. Edan is one of the founders and our head of product. And Dirk, who just answered that question on franchises, is also one of the founders and leads our community and PR relationships. All right, so we're going to get into the questions that people are most excited about, starting off with Spark. So this one goes to Edan. Can Spark from multiple users be pooled to accelerate the building / development of a single project? And this one is coming from T. Davis.
Yeah, so the short answer is yes. And let me elaborate a bit, but there's a caveat at the end. So when people build with Spark, so obviously people can stake their own Spark for their own properties in order to build on top of those properties. But eventually people will also be able to stake their own Spark for somebody else's project. So let's say, John, if you are building now a building and I have some free Spark, I'll be able to get to your building and stake my Spark in favor of construction for your building eventually. Now, the caveat is that when we launch property development, most likely that it's not going to be launched with that specific feature, but it is definitely something that will be implemented down the road.
Cool. All right. Let's see, the next one here on Spark I'll be taking. That is, how will Spark be airdropped to the player base? Which factors will determine the amount of Spark a player gets? And so for this answer, I'm actually going back to the original Spark article that we shared. And the truth is that article provided a lot of the information in terms of the details that we can provide on Spark right now. And so we broke that down into a couple categories in that article, and we don't yet have the percentages or exactly how it's going to be allocated, but the general criteria were the citizen airdrop, the community reserve, and the Upland reserve. And for more details there, you can revisit our Medium post where we provided a lot of details on everything that's gone into Spark as well. Okay, and the next question we have, this one's for Idan. Are any of the currently available properties going to meet the criteria for resource mining of Spark or nature resources? And that one is from Rick Courier.
Yeah, so maybe, and I think we've seen several questions around that area. So maybe it's a segue to maybe talk a bit about, and again, we mentioned that Spark would tie into a bigger picture of where you can mine it later on in Wasteland. And this is, by the way, this goes back to things that we've mentioned already in the 2020 roadmap. And I sense that there is some kind of confusion. So maybe it's kind of like it's going to be a good practice to establish some kind of like a baseline here. So again, cities in Upland are not meant for mining, right? So there is not going to be any properties in San Francisco or Fresno or New York City where which you'll be able to mine Spark. Right? Mining Spark is going to be reserved for wastelands. And these are going to be very specific definitions for what can qualify as wastelands. And furthermore, when we open up wastelands for mining, there will be a dedicated area for that will be very clear for users that is meant for mining. And again, the way we envision it, that it can be some desolated area, and again, it could be in California, it could be elsewhere in the world. There probably is going to be a small town of operations for which you can kind of like connect via train or airplanes to other parts of the world. But from then on, that will be your base for going out to the wasteland and mining Spark. So again, if I understand the question correctly, any current property in Upland that is in play is not going to be eligible for Spark mining.
Gotcha. That makes sense to me. And Idan, we were just talking about this. It seems like we have a perfect follow-up question here. What about farms? Will Fresno be able to have farms?
Okay. So again, granted that we haven't even introduced farms into Upland, this is kind of like a big vision, and it's a vision that we had since the earliest days of Upland. So yeah, it is. So farms in nature, there are going to be areas on the map that are a certain distance from urban areas and a certain distance from a body of water. Okay, but so it's not going to be, for example, in Fresno, but most likely that there is going to be eligible farmland close to Fresno or close to San Francisco. And again, these are going to be dedicated areas that we're going to open. It's going to be very clear for the player base that these are meant for farming. When that happens, and again, guys, this is coming down the future. We're talking about the vision right now, but you can see that we're taking steps to implement that vision.
Yes, begin with the farm in mind. All right, so this one's a little unconventional. I really like this question. And Don, I think this one will go to you as well, but Dirk, feel free to chime in here. What is the most exciting thing about Spark for you? So this is interesting because we can get a little abstract here, right? In terms of maybe what does it do for Upland, or how does it, uniquely shape people's relationship to the activities that we're creating? There's kind of a lot there, but Idan, what do you think? What's most exciting to you about Spark?
Well, so I mean, again, this is such a cool and complicated mechanic. I just want to see how it plays out as it relates to the economy. I'm just excited to get Upland to the phase where people can start developing their property. I know a lot of players have been waiting for it anxiously, and we've been waiting for it as well. And we were taking those baby steps into introducing these concepts into Upland. So to me, Spark ties directly into the introduction of property development. And I just can't wait to see what happens with it, in the Upland ecosystem.
Yeah, let me add also here. I think I could totally second that. And the other thing what gets exciting about Spark is the whole economy aspect, which is a different mechanic we're introducing now. It's staking, right? And you heard about DeFi and the blockchain space, people talking about staking, and so we're testing something really interesting out as a concept. We're going to watch it very closely. Of course, the impact on the economy. But what's also exciting, as you know, Apex is an in-app or in-game currency. It doesn't leave the app. However, with Spark, we will introduce also the possibilities to maybe get Sparks outside of Upland. We have some more words on that, on potential partnerships we're going to start, but that's also where we say, okay, we're really going to bring in other worlds into Upland and combine it with the existing Upland world and see what the impact here is. Why are we doing this? I have some more words on that when we speak a concrete promo we are going to run.
Very cool, very cool. And of course, we know we're going to get this question. People are very eager. Will Spark be distributed in November, December, or not until 2021?
Yeah, so John, do you want to take that one, or do you want me to?
Yeah, you can take that one down.
All right. Okay, so and again, keep in mind, guys, Spark ties in directly to property development. So Spark and property development are going to be introduced, on par with each other as a feature. We are working very, very hard to try and get that entire ecosystem in place in 2020. But if I were a betting man, I would say most likely it's going to be in 2021. So at least you get some kind of like a picture in mind of the time frame.
Okay, and we had a number of questions that were kind of, asking similar things in terms of how Spark would be released. And, I think one way that we can help people better understand the way this is going to roll out is that, Spark is what will power the property development, right? So the property development feature will be dependent on Spark being completed as a feature as well. And so we do have one surprise that we can announce now. And that's we're actually going to be releasing a property development sandbox feature more towards the end of this month or beginning of December. And with that feature, we're going to introduce also a number of mini games and new challenges that will be based around temporary property development. And so to clarify here, this is property development as a sandbox, right? So you'll get to play with the feature, see the user experience, see how properties will look on Upland. We'll be releasing the sandbox with 3 different types of property initially, and then we'll be adding more to it as time goes on. And so this will give users, again, the ability to understand how the feature will work, ask questions, and also have a lot of fun, because we're going to be running different mini games based around property development in this sandbox, neighborhood challenges, strategy competitions. And I can genuinely say this is the most fun I've had so far, just getting into the gaming mechanisms. Where we go with property development when it comes to gamification, when it's fully released, there's just really no limits. That much is clear. So I'm sure we're going to get a large number of questions on that one, but dropped a bombshell there. All right, let's see. Next question that we had on Spark. All right, I'm not sure if we already clarified this. Can building on a wasteland improve Spark mining? Did we already clarify? So wastelands actually will not be something that you can build on. You'll be able to have equipment that you use for mining that will be temporarily placed on the wasteland. But there will be no properties on the wastelands or the areas that are designated for mining. Is there anything else that you'd like to add on top of that, Idan?
Yeah, and I think maybe, there was one question that was asking, and maybe it's a good segue to close kind of like the issue of Spark, unless people have live questions. And that was like, why did we even come up with the concept of Sparks? And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. The first one is we wanted a mechanism that would allow the market to dictate the costs of building in Upland. And that is not something you can do by just, putting in a price tag and then letting everybody, run off and build. The other thing is that we wanted a mechanism that would allow us to define the building capacity of Upland. Like, think about it today in San Francisco, right? There is a certain amount of output, right, you can build that you can't break unless you bring in, huge amounts of resources. So we thought that it would be a very interesting mechanic to tie that into real world mechanics but also kind of like gauge the amount of output that can happen. We didn't want to create a situation where straight out of the bat, everybody starts building in a havoc and then having it kind of like go down with time. And then the other thing is, the other two things are, one, that tying into mining, which we always had the vision that kind of like puts a utility to other parts of the world that are not necessarily cities. And then at the end of the day, this also gives us a great way to drive engagement and incentives without inflating necessarily the Apex economy. So there's a very high value for a second currency in a game in such an elaborate ecosystem such as Upland. So I think that kind of like ties together the thinking behind Spark. And plus, it's like ultra cool, and it's a totally new thing that I think hopefully people write about this at some point.
With the first blockchain game introducing this kind of mechanism of a resource token in that sense. So that's also where keep on innovating here.
Yeah, that was a great explanation. And I've got to say, one of the things I find really cool personally is just the imagination that this type of mechanism kind of invokes. We've already talked about a token that's based off of bio concepts, life concepts. But just the fact that we can, tokenize a certain mode of productivity or exchange in Upland speaks to, where we can take this in the future, right? Things that we haven't even thought about, and ways of exchanging within Upland that there's really no limit to the way in which people can ultimately interact in a metaverse like this.
Oh yeah, exciting times for us.
Yep. So we have a couple of questions on building here that were kind of already grouped in a little bit when it came to some of our Spark answers. As I mentioned, a lot of that is going to be tied together when it comes to releasing. But this next question, I think, will get us going in the right direction when it comes to building and uniquely what's going on there. So from Recurrier, we have, how will building designs be determined? And when can we expect guidance so that modeling can begin? So that's one of a series of questions, but Idan, maybe you want to get us started on that one?
Sure. So when we launch property development, first of all, there are going to be a certain preset amount of models that people can develop, right? So we're not launching with the ability straight off the bat to just put in your own custom designs. Okay, so it's going to be limited. And in general, I think it's important to understand we're trying to achieve an end result where the look and feel of Upland is not like chaotic in terms of like, wild visual variance between one model to another of things that are being built in there. We want to kind of like try to maintain kind of like a visual coherence to whatever we put in Upland. So if you equivalent it, it's more going to be like more kind of like similar to the Apple ecosystem as opposed to the Google ecosystem, right? So it's kind of like we want to have a controlled style and look and feel to it. It doesn't mean people are not going to be able eventually to put in their own custom designs. And I think I also saw a question about that, and maybe that's a good place to kind of like answer that as well. So again, eventually we imagine that people are able to create their own designs. These will have to follow visual guidelines. And maybe some of them will have to get approved by our team or kind of like get a direction from our team where they can be improved to the point where they can be implemented. But in terms of the development mechanics, I think probably one of the lowest hanging fruit where we can introduce the concept of enabling people to add their own custom designs is the fact that if you want to build a building that actually resembles the real world counterpart of what's in your property right now, this is probably going to be one of the first things that we enable as custom 3D models, uploaded by players. Other than that, property development will be launched limited to the models that we provide as a preset.
Gotcha. And so I just want to kind of deepen this part of the conversation a little bit, Idan. When we're talking about these constraints on how it'll look, are we talking about something that's like shorter term, or will this always be something that's a part of Upland? Will players eventually be able to, have a higher degree of customization like in their homes? Because I think that's something that players are sometimes a little bit confused about, right? How much control we're going to have versus on a long enough timeline, how much control will they have?
Yes. So again, I think these are two separate questions. So if we're talking about in-home experiences, then I think there you have a lot more room for variance and kind of like differences between house to house. I know Dirk maybe can speak a bit about how we imagine, the in-home experiences actually turning into like 3D immersive experiences down the road. So I think that's kind of like more open for much more variability. But I think when you look on the outside, I think one of the important things is we want to maintain, again, some kind of a coherent visual style of how Uplands looks in terms of its buildings and things that are put on top of the map. And for that, we're going to have kind of like a style guide, and we're going to be kind of like implementing processes where and anything that is user created is going to go through a slight approval process, and anything that looks wildly like foreign to Upland will probably require some tweaking on the player's behalf before it can be uploaded. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. Clarified quite a bit there, and I think that opens up a gateway into getting into some of the augmented reality stuff, but we'll get to that a little bit further down the list. So the next question we have here, I think we should also address this one from Recurrier as well. So Recurrier is indicating that a lot of players have plans to develop properties in such a way that requires them to collaborate. So are we going to be providing any guidelines on what will be allowed in terms of combining properties, and joint ownership, things like that, so that players can collaborate on their development?
Yeah, so I think probably two relevant questions in there. And one is there a concept of joint ownership for properties? The answer is yes, though we haven't specified yet the target for when that's going to be implemented. And then the other one is, can two properties be merged together into one single bigger property? Again, the answer to that is eventually yes, although this is not something currently that's very high on our priority list for implementation. So this one will require a little bit more patience until we get to that point.
Gotcha. Makes sense to me. All right. Next one we have here is from Woot McLake. And that is, can you give an idea of how much time and resource will be needed to build a decent house in a property? So there's one thing I want to address here, and that's, we get a lot of questions that are looking for numbers, and numbers are almost always going to be something that we release when we're ready to release the feature, right? Because a lot of what drives Upland is getting the math right, getting the mechanisms and the weighing, the incentives well balanced. And so numbers are almost always going to be one of the last things that we release when we're releasing a new feature. That said, as a rule of thumb in Upland, when it comes to the speed of activity, like travel or building, rule of thumb is essentially you can look at the real world speed and divide it by 5, right? And obviously there'll be some variance in terms of how that plays out in the Upland metaverse, but it's a good rule of thumb for setting your expectations on things like property development. Is there anything additionally you'd like to say on top of that one, Idan?
No, I think you said it well. And again, just to match, if the expectation is that we're gonna initiate a building and within 1 hour it's gonna be complete, you're probably gonna get disappointed. And I think maybe another expectation to set, again, keep in mind that when we launch property development, there's gonna be a very, very high demand for building, and that will probably drive the price of building up, right? And I would urge people to kind of like take a step back and consider at that point if maybe you want to wait until a point in time where it gets more accessible, because I don't want people to get frustrated with the costs of building just because there's an ultra high demand when it's launched. So this is just to set expectations, and obviously we are operating in totally uncharted waters, right? And we have our models always, we have our simulations, but always reality proves a bit different. So we're gonna, as always, launch the feature, study what happens, and tweak it as required to kind of find that sweet spot for Upland.
And another thing I think that's really interesting there when it comes to speed is, naturally there will be more development at a faster rate the more people collaborate and work on staking together, right? So it's like the more nuanced and advanced the economy is with people working together, collaborating, developing businesses together, the faster everything will actually be able to get built out. That's just built into the nature of Spark, which is, one of the reasons that mechanism is so neat. It really channels the power of, the whole of Upland and makes it so that, smaller players can participate in building bigger things.
Yep.
All right, let's see here. All right, so Z Hidalgo Kids asks, what is the full significance of having a large property lot and land size? So I don't mean to disappoint here, but for now, a bigger lot essentially just lets you build more. You can build a larger property and that's about it. Now, in the future, when we have third-party development, there might be some integrations where, players are looking at the size of a lot to determine something else. Now, Idan, I know that's something that you had mentioned before, the third-party developments that might look at that. Are there any other examples of what that might look like?
Again, there's an endless amount of things you can imagine that go on. I think the point here to make is that the size of a property currently, it probably dictates the price you paid for it and the earnings that you have on it. And it dictates what you can do with it in terms of property development at this point in Upland. And again, we haven't communicated any other features that have to do specifically with the size of the property.
Gotcha. Makes sense to me. All right, the next question here we have is from Ben68. Are there any plans to open up any further areas in San Francisco below the current neighborhood boundaries? So Ben68, eventually, yes, we do plan on opening up more areas, especially with FSA like attributes, but there are no plans in the immediate future. Originally, we were looking at areas like South San Francisco when we wanted to do the heavy rollout of the FSA, but ultimately landed on Fresno because Fresno is better for our kind of pricing goals when it came to new players being introduced to Upland. So, of course, something to keep in mind is on a long enough timeline as well, based on our product growth and our community growth, we want to open up everything, right? We want to open up every area pretty much on the map where there are people to expand the Upland metaverse, but that obviously takes some time. All right.
And maybe just to add in here, right? So there's no active plans, so for sure not in this year, right, to open up a new city or something, right? We're always driven by the scarcity, and when we understand that most of the properties are getting sold. That was one of the reasons we waited for the 50% in San Francisco to then eventually open up New York a little bit further. So, and Fresno was a special case, as we all know, because of FSA. So speaking of, because I think it comes also came up, when are we going to go international? We're going to go more national first and so on. So we're investigating all that and to see also where our current markets are, maybe to give you just maybe, where our player base is from. And that also dictates maybe a little bit how we continue to develop going forward. So we currently have roughly 50% of our players in the US. We have roughly 10% in the UK, 10% in Germany, and then you have maybe another 10% in other English-speaking places like Canada or Australia, and then the rest is the rest of the world. However, Upland is going to be a global game, and it's going to be driven by the potentials we can tap into in each region, and we're tapping into certain things. As you probably heard, we did a small announcement with a partner in China, so we're testing out a little bit the Asian market, and we're doing some stuff in Europe and in Germany and in France. So we're seeing, you know, how the reactions is there, and then eventually we start to expand from there. But completely speaking, right now of new areas, there's nothing concretely planned, especially not for this year.
All right, thanks, Dirk. You actually just addressed a number of the upcoming questions that we had. All right, so the next question that I have here, this one actually goes to Dirk as well. Will you plan to limit at some point the inflation rate of currencies, especially UPX? And this is from Bogdansky.
Yeah, as you all know, right now we get 70.3% when you purchase a property across the board. And we always said that we are going to lower this. And why are we going to lower this? Or why did we in the first place have that in the beginning? Because we have to kickstart the economy. We said it also in previous AMAs, that in order to get everything, the ball rolling. But eventually when we introduce now property development, when we introduce businesses, we want that the citizens of Upland do, you know, interact between each other. That means also we want to increase the velocity, the turnaround of Apex between the players. That means we, as let's say, however you want to call us, the central unit, so we want to less support that in, you know, giving out those. When exactly that is going to be reduced, that depends again on the numbers we're seeing once we're rolling out more features. But for also here again, you know, for this year, I mean, there's no reduction in the yield we're currently providing.
Absolutely. Maybe to add to that, I think I saw another question. It's a good place to address it. So there was a question, why don't we allow setting send fees to zero? And I think it ties a bit back to that. So when we introduced basically sending your Explorer from property to property and asking fees for that, one of the key reasons for that was to start creating that effect and reason for Apex exchanging hands between players. And again, we wanted to avoid a situation where, you know, everybody just sets it to zero and then we lost that type of an effect. We think it's an important effect of the economy. And the answer to are we going to allow it in the future is, the more there is opportunity and other more natural and organic reasons for players to exchange Apex, for example, in businesses or when providing services from one player to another, that's when we'll be more comfortable about allowing such things as, you know, zero Apex send fees. But again, the thought right now is to support the idea that Apex get exchanged between players.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Maybe just one last addition here, because the ultimate vision of Upland is to build a real and open economy on the side. So that's the big thing, right? Like a new country or something, right? Which completely works and functions on its own. It's a big task, and you know, there's a lot of simulations you have to run. You have to understand how inflation works and how actually when you do certain things, then demand goes down, supplies goes up, whatever. So that's something we have to observe. But this is what gets so exciting, and where we believe also this will be one day maybe taught in universities, because it's a nice case for students to learn. You know, like the very much reason when Monopoly was like a couple 100 years ago so launched. The original board game is to teach people about capitalism, and here it's a little the same, right? We have actually an economy which is open and it follows its own rules. And when you start an economy, you always have to subsidize at the beginning, you know, the transactions, but then eventually, you know, the economy hopefully starts working on its own.
Yeah, Dirk, and I think that kind of leads us perfectly into this next question we have from Larry Fine 47. The question is, why do we pay a 5% fee for buying/selling properties? Where do those fees go? And so the answer to that, as many of our players know, is that those fees go to the community pool. And that's where we fund the returns that the properties provide, as well as bonuses from competitions. And it helps, you know, ensure that there's economic circulation, to what Dirk was just talking about. And one way to view those fees, the role of those fees in the world of Upland, is that on a long enough timeline, we're aiming for a kind of equilibrium, right? Where the fees that are produced by player interactions and transactions power, new players getting bonuses from games and competitions, And there's a fully functioning economy that's very nuanced and driven by, you know, what individuals want to be doing and how they want to be, you know, living their life in Upland.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Maybe add one more thing is in here. You have to have in mind that Apex is strictly a utility token. That means medium of exchange, and also in Upland. It's, you know, because we always get asked, you know, is Apex, you know, can you trade it for Fiat? Can it be traded on exchanges and so on? And that's exactly what we don't want to do, because the value creation in our world starts, you know, with that people create something, they create a building, they create something in the future, right? And through, technically speaking, through NFTs, non-fungible tokens, that's where the exchange is really happening. So we're not really interested that Apex itself becomes, and just very much like dollars, right? Like in real life. I mean, of course, you have some people who are trading dollars and trying to make a margin and so on, but at the end of the day, it's just a medium of exchange as well. And you have to really see Apex in that direction concerning the economy.
Yep, that's an important thing to clarify. And another piece of low-hanging fruit, Dirk, is, you know, we had a player that asked, are the properties in Upland NFTs?
Yes, dot. They
right.
are. Simple. Quick answer.
Yeah.
Right. So that is the foundation for the NFT metaverse that is Upland, is the property parcel, as we introduced in our NFT article about a month ago. All right. And now we're moving on to the category of fiat out. We had just a couple of questions here. So the first one is from Wall Street. Will fiat be exchangeable for UpX in game or out, or not at all? And Don, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think Dirk just answered that, you know, just a minute ago. So again, not now. And again, first reason is how Dirk explained it. Another reason is a regulatory one. So again, we've built a holistic ecosystem that allows people to participate in this open economy, but also more importantly, allows people to exchange money back into the, exchange value back into the real world using fiat currency. So the fact that Apex is a purely utility token and a means to exchange value inside of Upland, this is what allows us and we just launched that literally yesterday. The ability for players to sell their digital assets for fiat currency and do that in a way that's regulatory compliant in the US and other highly regulated markets. And this is the magic of Upland, because it makes it this together like with the simplicity of onboarding and the way that we have kind of like solved all the complexities of blockchain identity and private key management behind our smart client, while still adhering to the kind of like benefits that players get from true ownership. This whole thing together is what makes Upland palatable and to mass audiences potentially. And mass audiences, how much we would ideologically want them to like and use cryptocurrencies to exchange value, mass audiences today still operate in fiat. And giving that option, and kind of like part of it is, again, having Apex as a utility token. Having Upland allow that to mass audiences is we strongly believe, what will contribute to the great success of the game.
Yeah, definitely makes sense to me. And Don, I think this is another question that's up your alley. So how will fiat out affect FSA and FSA eligibility, since it provides player with a way of controlling his net worth? And that is from player G30G4 3BR4. I think that's how you pronounce it.
That is actually a very, very good and interesting question. And we had two ways of kind of like approaching this. Both have pros and cons. And I'm going to start out with the way that we rolled out. So as you guys know, we deployed Sidecar 1 yesterday. And this is actually the full integration that we have with our partners at Fiat to allow selling NFTs for US dollars. And by the way, next week we're going to launch the beta program, and stay tuned for announcements about that as well. But when we launch, the net worth consequence of a property, which, as you all know, is measured in Apex, is going to be measured by the last notarized Apex worth sale on the blockchain in Upland. Okay, so it's not going to be based on the actual fiat value that the property was purchased on. And this is the way we're going to launch. And we understand that we're going to have to closely monitor how that operates and what are the effects of that. Because the other option would be to measure net worth using the Apex equivalent of the fiat transaction that happened. Right, so these are the two options. We're going to launch with the fact that net worth is the last Apex transaction for that property, but we're going to monitor it closely to see if it's required to shift towards the latter method.
Gotcha. Just a question coming in: do people need to visit the Telia property for fiat out? And that's no. You don't need to.
No, so these are going to operate the same as marketplace transactions. You don't need your Explorer to be in the vicinity of a property. But one important thing to note, when you're going to start to see as part of the beta program that certain properties become available to purchase for US$, that is only going to be available on our web interface. So either on desktop or on mobile web. So when you look at it inside the apps, you're going to see that these properties are for sale, but it's going to show you that these are available only on web. There are a couple of reasons for that we've covered in our Medium post, but just a thing to note that fiat purchases happen on our web applications.
I want to also add one more thing, is because some people were concerned FSA, that gets some misuse with referrals. I think MG also had a question in that direction. What's also important, of course, we have existing mechanics in the games like the referral code, and we're going to watch how things are evolving, especially now once we're launching fiat out, right? And when we see that somehow the economy gets negatively impacted, we might have to change things, right? Of course, there's no active plan on doing that, but still we make sure, because our ultimate goal is always have a stable economy within the game. So, yeah.
Right, and we just had this question pop up. Idan, I know we were talking about this. Fiat out will eventually be available to all Uplanders, right? Is that the eventual goal?
Absolutely. So so most likely there will be some constraints about. So obviously, visitors are not going to be able to fiat out. It's only going to be a feature that's available for Uplanders and above. Moreover, we may introduce some kind of like precautionary methods to try to fight potential fraud, which means it may be the case that an Uplander can trade for fiat, but only after they have spent 1 month in the game or so. I don't have the actual numbers, but we are going to put mechanics in place that would help fight potential fraud, because as you know, whenever you put a system that allows people to extract monetary value, there are going to be people who are going to try to take advantage of that system and make easy and fraudulent profit. But again, the big picture is that fiat out should be available for everybody who participates in the game.
Gotcha. Sounds awesome.
I don't know if you clarified that purchasing with fiat will be possible for everyone, right? It's just the people who can sell for fiat, right? That's we're starting with a small number, and then we're substantially increasing that until everyone is able, above Uplander.
Cool. And now we are shifting to the business category of our questions. I know we've talked a bit about business embedded in some of our other answers, but we have some business specific questions here. The first one is from Ben68. And Ben's indicating here that they would like to have 3 of the same businesses in 3 different cities: Fresno, San Fran, and New York. Will Ben68 be required to get 3 different business licenses for those businesses?
The answer is yes. So businesses, as we imagine them, they are going to be limited per locale. So, for example, and I'm just using fake numbers right now. If we have, if we take San Francisco, for example, San Francisco may have only 20 available licenses for block explorer shops. Okay, and that's going to be limited to San Francisco. And Fresno may have a different set of limitations, and so may New York. So businesses are going to be very much tied to specific locales, and that's why you're going to require separate business licenses for each city.
Gotcha. That makes sense to me. Again, another way that we're, emulating the real world economy. So the next one on business licenses comes from Stirs Merlin, and Stirs Merlin is asking about this spread in prices and the diversity of business licenses. So, for example, will there be an FSA for business licenses that allows new players to get started in business easier?
Yeah, I can take that. So, I mean, yeah, the thing is, especially when it comes to FSA, yeah, sure, we have to look into how that actually is mirrored in the, with the FSA, with the lower income or lower net worth players, and then to the higher net worth players. So we have not finalized all the attribution. How are we going to add that to each category? That's still to be discussed. Also, how much license we are going to launch, and then so on, and who's going to get to it. That this is all the details we're currently working on.
But also keep in mind, like if you follow the evolution of Upland, you see that again, this is highly dependent on locales. So I don't think the mind frame of thinking about it should be necessarily is a specific business license going to be allocated for FSA. Think about the direction of, okay, you want to operate like a smaller business or a more affordable business. The place you may want to do that in is maybe Fresno as opposed to San Francisco, because it's probably not realistic to think that you will be able to have like super affordable licenses or operational costs in San Francisco just because you're a certain type of player. We want to, again, the aim is to have as much of an open economy. And I think again, the better metaphor is, if you don't have the funds or the means to operate a business in San Francisco, you'll probably be able to run it in Fresno. And it's probably going to be more affordable. Again, depending on how the economy develops, but this is where we're kind of like shifting it towards.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So to recap that, we're looking more to the market dynamics themselves and the demand to determine, where it'll be easy to start a business and where it'll be more difficult or more competitive or more expensive to start a business, right? Like, just like we have in reality, if you go to New York and you want to start a business, you're going to have a lot of competitors and pretty much everything you can imagine. Yet if you go into the suburbs, it's a lot easier to start your burrito sushi shop, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe to add on to this, it's when you today purchase a property, so you get an automatic yield, so you don't have to think a lot, obviously, because it's coming automatically. But business is like very much like in the real world. When you want to start a business, and John just hinted at it, right? That means also you have to think about the whole investment case in a certain way for you, right? So you invest into something. You want to get more users, maybe 2 or more players come to your Block Explorer shop. So you need to think about how can you find those, and then do you have to invest some money? Do you have to do something here in order to get them there? It's very much in the beginning, like any investment in the real world. In the beginning, you have some payments which go out, and then eventually payments will come in. And over time, and you take a certain time value of your whole investment, hopefully this is a positive investment for you in that case. So that's something you have to have in mind. It's very much mirroring the real world. It's not that you can expect automatic income coming out of it. And that's also where you have to make maybe yourself a mini business plan around that.
I mean, imagine just your brand, right? Like you can imagine 2 Block Explorer shops. You can imagine one owner spending time in the community, or maybe advertising or building a cool brand around it, or maybe running competitions around the brand, as opposed to another owner that may not, may just expect the Block Explorer shop to run on its own. They can expect 2 different, totally different results in terms of how much income they can generate out of that business.
Yeah. One thing I want quickly to add on here is also, we saw that when we had all this, landmark things, how they were advertised in the community channels. We are also thinking how to support certain advertisements for the players, right? But eventually avoiding that, our standard channels or so ever get polluted. So we need to have advertisements possibilities in Upland directly. So we're currently thinking about the concepts here.
So I think another related concept there that we should clarify, because I just want to make sure there's no confusion here. The question's coming up in the chat. So that's the interpretation that we can't have 3 NFT galleries in the same neighborhood. Is that what was intended, Idan, or were you saying that there might not be demand to support 3 NFT shops in the same neighborhood?
Yeah, so again, the current plan is to have business license limitations on a city level, not on a neighborhood level. So there are no expected limitations that would not allow somebody to, to build a competitive business in the same neighborhood that you operate.
Gotcha. Or for a neighborhood to develop a reputation as being like, let's say the music shop neighborhood, right? Where you have a bunch of music NFTs being sold in that one neighborhood, right? That might be like the music capital of San Francisco or something like that.
Yeah, like the Block Explorer Street, or the art gallery, cool part of town. Yeah, that would be organic, the organic way that Upland develops, and that's actually the cool part, I think.
Yep. And I just made that one up when I said music shop, but just to throw that one out there, everyone who's listening, something you might want to think about is those music NFTs. I know people who make ads and they sell those sounds, and if you can create sounds as an NFT, there might be a market there in Upland. All right. Let's see here. So this one is interesting. With regards to business licenses or permits, can they be leased out just once or continuously leased out once that business is active? So I guess they're asking about like subleasing a business license, right? If a business is active and running, can other businesses run under them on the same license?
I'm not sure. Okay, I think you can read that question several ways. Let's just clarify. So it's pretty simple. You can either own or lease a business license. As long as you either own or lease it, you can apply it to your business and run it. So if you lease a business license and then for some reason your lease is done and the owner doesn't want to lease it to you, you would have to find another way to obtain a business license, either lease it for somebody else or purchase it for somebody else in order to keep running that business. If you fail to do so, you will be basically out of business. And I think that's the kind of like the foundation of business licenses.
Yep, that makes sense to me. And the last question we have in the business category is, will Upland have the feature of combining 2 accounts to create a single entity for business structures?
Interesting.
I need some clarification about that question.
So they want to get rid of their personhood and just become a business with another player. They want to combine their identities, their digital identities.
Two founders in a virtual incorporated. I read that, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. Interesting concept, but not on the immediate roadmap, to be honest.
They want to exist as a purely virtual business. That's an interesting way to play with digital identity. Something for us to think about in the future. All right, and now we're moving on. We just have a couple questions about Fresno. I know we've already talked about Fresno a little bit, embedded in some of the other questions we were answering. And so this first one is from Green Turtle. When are the properties for the remaining Fresno collections going to go unlocked? And I can address that one. We don't have a set date yet, but we can say you'll be notified in advance, and there's a good likelihood that it'll be tied to a future release or another event that we have coming up. And again, just as a refresher, the reason that those were locked is we wanted to, prevent just a cash grab immediately upon Fresno opening and ensure that newer players had an opportunity to get some, unique items in Fresno. And so that's why we wanted to open some of these collections and special properties a little bit more slowly. Okay, and this next question on Fresno goes to Idan. This one's from Jun. Fresno treasure hunting. When will the standard treasure hunt cost and treasure reward calculations be readjusted to match San Francisco? And when will the exclusive treasure hunts be available in Fresno?
Right. So the answer for the first part is 30 minutes ago. So that was actually a misconfiguration, and that got fixed already. So now standard treasure hunts in Fresno are as intended. They cost 20 UPIX to spawn. And then we do not have immediate plans yet to introduce exclusive treasure hunts in Fresno. We would wait to see how treasure hunting in general in Fresno develops. You wanted to give it a bit more time, a couple of months, just to see how things shape up. We may also need to tweak a bit the math behind the treasure hunts in Fresno as well. So just a bit more patience, and we'll get there eventually.
Right, makes sense to me. And just to calibrate everybody, we have about 35 more minutes, and we have a couple more topics to go through. And the big topic we'll be kind of ending with is we have a large number of questions that relate to our roadmap and what we're going to be building in the future. And we'll also be looking into the questions that are being asked on Zoom as well. Some of them we've already addressed in one way or another, embedded in our answers to another question. Some of them we'll get to more closely to the end here. So that is it for Fresno. We have a couple questions for New York City. The first one is, when will we get Manhattan collections? And that is from Brian. And Brian, I can address that one. It's very similar to the answer we gave for Fresno. We don't have exact dates yet, but we will be tying the unlocking of Manhattan collections to other feature releases that occur in San Francisco in Upland. As we mentioned, we want San Francisco to be the area that gets the most activity, the most action, and rewards early adopters the most. Well, Manhattan remains in vanilla mode for a little bit longer. And so this is why, as we release new features in San Francisco, we'll slowly be releasing the collections in Manhattan. All right. And the next question about New York City, any hints on the release of collections? Oh, that's the same one. Sorry. Release date. Yep, that is it for the New York questions, actually. Moving on to the subject of support, we have a question from MG. What are the plans to increase better community support? Players are waiting weeks for support responses, if they even get an answer. So we definitely understand how that one can feel, MG. It's something that we're working on quite a bit to improve. Dirk, did you want to provide some more details on that?
Yeah, I mean, normally it should not happen, right? That unless it's a super technical issue that it takes long. If maybe some, if your question hasn't been answered, right, just maybe you send a reminder to support. However, we just currently hired 2 new people coming on board soon. Also, you will see new faces in the community, talking about new concepts for the community also. So we are increasing that in order to just deliver better customer service here.
Cool. All right. And so I guess this other question is kind of grouped in. T. Davis, I know you provided us a couple more details on where you feel our support is lacking. I think Dirk just kind of addressed that, and you can definitely say, everything that goes into the feedback, we read all of those things, and we're definitely creating a list of improvements that we can make, and tracking the number of people that support different feature recommendations. That is an area where we fell a little bit behind. We were getting a lot of feedback, and we needed to improve the system that we were utilizing to organize and take in feedback. And so it's something we're still working on, and we'll be sharing with the community when we have updates. But rest assured, we read every single comment that comes in through the feedback channel on our Discord. And a lot of them get into our meetings and our discussions, and they directly impact, how we're prioritizing things, and what improvements we're sensitive to.
I want to add also one thing in the terms of the community channels. So we're currently looking into a moderator concept for especially non-English speaking channels. So obviously we speak some languages in the team, but not all of them. And that's also, once we see that's working fine, and we have to define the rules for those moderators, we could also imagine that we have some moderators in the English speaking community. So that's a concept we're actively looking into. So moderate players as moderators.
Cool. So the next subject we're going to be getting into is onboarding. We had a couple of questions around that. So the first one, we actually had a couple of questions from Larry Fine. The first one is, the start of this game can be pretty daunting for new players. In order for quicker adoption, you shouldn't need Medium or Discord. Do you have any plans to streamline all the information required to get started? So Larry Fine, 47, I can say 100% the answer is yes. And so that's something that we're always paying attention to and making small improvements to. And at certain points, you'll see us making much bigger improvements. We're always looking at the data of our onboarding. And it's why, for example, we launched Fresno, right? So now it's a lot easier for new players to get started, to get a couple properties, to see how the gaming mechanisms work, to do some treasure hunts. And as we release more features, we'll make it easier and easier for new players to get into the Upland economy, to not have to be a hardcore fan, on the Discord and reading all the Medium posts to understand what's happening. When we launched Fresno, we also launched a new tutorial that explained a little bit more of the game mechanisms and provided a little bit more context around the difference between Fresno and San Francisco. And we'll continue to do so. As time goes on, we'll be a little bit more data driven when it comes to our communications. So ensuring that the right players get the right messages so that they know what to do next, right? When it comes to, maybe making a deal, buying a property, completing a collection, things like that. We're going to do a lot more automated hand-holding in addition to, just being better in the community, offering support, creating better onboarding channels, and other things that we've already kind of shown that we're committed to.
Yeah, maybe to add in here, as you know, Uplink is going to be, once we branch out to more cities, it's going to be more complex. Lots of things happening in cities and so on. That's also one of the reasons why we started the Upland Contributor Network. And under the Upland Contributor Network, we have different programs. One program we launched so far is the Broadcasters. So these are some of the very ambitious Uplander to help other Uplanders to get into the game. We have Upland Central, we have Left House with stuff, with the Apex podcast, so all of UCNs plus, we have a lot of good content out there. Recurring with his stuff. So I think that's also something where we will really heavily want to rely on, that the community helps itself in a certain way, because that's the only way how Uplanders will be also going to grow. And just to also to underline one more thing is, people always said, who does UCN has a special advantage or something? No, they have absolutely, we never give them any advantage in the game, just to make that clear again. All we give them is information so they can actually distribute that information to others, in order to spread the word. So that's the basic idea about the UCN. But Upland's going to be very strongly community driven. That's one of the reasons we call it, want to build one of the largest community on Earth, because we're the Earth's metaverse.
Yeah, that's definitely a good thing to point out. And, to that point, something that we had mentioned earlier this week, but, we're revamping a number of the challenges as well to encourage more collaboration between more experienced players and newer players. For example, the Rising Star Challenge, we're changing so that the collections need to be active. So that's one version of it. Another is for the People's Champ, making it so that the visits need to be to unique visitors, right? And you can't just visit the same visitor over and over again, which means that in order to win that competition, you'll have to visit a wide variety of different visitors, right? So we'll have more distributed visits in Upland. And we're finding more, mechanisms to make it friendlier and easier for new players to get started, get rewarded, and get into the competitions as well. Okay. The next question we have in the onboarding category, this covers kind of a couple different areas, and also just popped up in the chat as well. Will we get direct in-game communication? This player is saying it might help new players, and a number of players have also mentioned it can help with trading, making deals, and a number of other areas that it touches. And this question is from Rotten Tot.
Yeah, as you know, Upland is based on those three pillars, right? Play, earn, connect. And connect is actually that whole idea of in-game communication and exchanging things. So we always said, we want to have virtual coffee shops, but there might be other places in Upland where you can meet, where you can chat, right? Thinking about universities, cinemas, these kind of things in the more distant futures, right? Where eventually we're going to launch those coffee shops to start out with something. But it's one hand is tied maybe to a property directly, where you can do things, but then there will be other sorts of communications you can do also directly in the app. So we're currently looking at those concepts, and hopefully we'll be able to launch something soon, so you can actually move some of the conversations you have maybe on DMing in Discord really directly into the app.
All right, all right. So we're moving now on to, we have one question about referrals, and then we're going to get into some bigger picture roadmap questions, and that'll be rounding up the submitted questions. So MG asked about referrals. Will the referral system change? As an example, if a player gets his friend to the game and his first purchase is 10K, both players get the UPX bonus. They buy properties, sell them for 70% of the mint price in USD. These low price properties will sell faster than others, and sellers still make a profit. This will have a huge effect on the economy. So do we have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think I already answered it previously, but first of all, I personally think it does not have a huge effect, right? It can have some impact, of course, on the economy. And if the impact is too negative and we see something, then we might have to change something. I mean, that's, again, economy, ultimate goal is to be stable and not to be influenced by gaming the system. Now,
yeah, maybe to add to that again, now that we introduce Fiat out, again, we're going to study closely the effects that this has on all of these mechanics. And if we determine that the referral bonus needs to be capped or otherwise tweaked, we will absolutely act to achieve that. So we are not going to let this or that mechanism, kind of like hurt the economy just because it's there. We're going to fix it if it happens.
Yeah, that's a really good point you're making, Don, and something that I think, is important for a lot of the players to keep in mind. As we discover, flaws in the mechanisms we're constructing, we can always self-correct, right? And that is one of like the unique values of being in this beta right now. We're learning so much about what we're building and how to make the right decisions, right? We're constantly getting feedback, and that's why we're so thankful that we have all these players on Discord giving us feedback and letting us know what's working, what's not working, in addition to all the data we're gathering, directly at the event level in our database. So something to keep in mind is that we are constantly learning and figuring out, how to build the right thing and the right economic structures. Okay. And so the next question we have here is from Nitrin, and it is about cars. He says, in the last AMA, you mentioned car races will be available in early 2021. Can you elaborate on timing, mechanics of how this will work, and why we don't see that on the roadmap?
Yes. So first of all, I want to take a step back. I don't think we said that we're going to launch car racing in early 2021. I think we mentioned a hint about car racing in general in the last AMA. And I wanna clarify a bit. So first thing, we've always imagined the car NFT in Upland. That is absolutely going to be there, and it's going to be super cool. It's going to serve you as another means for a player to travel around the Upland world without having to use necessarily a car or an airplane. And it has such a cool, collectible prospect to it, especially when we think about getting in like real world brands. And maybe it's Mercedes or Porsche or some other, real world car manufacturers that kind of like set, put this series of collectible car models inside of Upland that can later on fuel businesses such as car dealerships, which we already also have communicated in our business roadmap. So the car NFT and the car concept is an absolute reality that's going to happen in Upland, and it's probably going to happen. It is going to happen in 2021. Now, as for car racing, now that you have all this ecosystem and you have this cool map, we've come up with what we think is a very cool game mechanic that would enable you to kind of like take different elements, such as the car that you are racing, the driver that is racing the car, different elements that can go on top of that. And then you have a projected race that is actually on the map of Upland. But here's the cool thing. Now, it's not going to be a race where you actually drive the car real time to win it. It's going to be simulated races that get projected on the map that take into account kind of like your ability, your cars, your opponents, the actual route that you are racing at. And then you're going to be able to race, to run these races using for UPX, right? So, you're going to be able to buy into the race with an UPX, and then, the winner of the race is going to collect that amount. And again, these are going to be like rapid mechanics that you can keep doing in Upland. And this is our vision for car racing in Upland. It's going to be, I'm not familiar with anything similar in the real world right now, but we believe it's going to be ultra cool. Now, as regards to the timing, we have not yet communicated when it's going to happen. And Nasherin asks why it's not on the roadmap. So maybe that's a segue to a different question. We're going to communicate the 2021 roadmap in 2021, similar to how we did the 2020 roadmap. And then you can expect to see these types of things kind of like laid out on the roadmap.
Gotcha. Yeah, that addressed, I think, a number of different things that we had come up around roadmap questions. So thanks for that, Idan. And, you know, a number of players have been asking, you know, can they get a better idea around how we're doing on the current roadmap? Are they going to get an update on that one, or they just have to wait till the 2021 roadmap comes out?
Yeah, so I think the updates for that one, you know, people see as we deploy our builds. And I think, you know, looking back at the roadmap, we're pretty proud and comfortable with what we've achieved. I think kind of like there are, keep in mind, we have had a slight shift in priorities with different elements, as you've seen during the year. And I think it's a good thing that we're able to kind of like, rather than just stick to the absolute, you know, technical details of the plan, as to making small adjustments as we go. So what we've seen basically is that a couple of things that we were pretty confident about got kind of like taken lower in priority. I think the big things in there were squads, and then the dashboard and statistics part of the game. And I think, by the way, just one small note about dashboard and statistics. What we've seen is that in the vacuum that got created, the community stepped up and created actually some very useful tools that kind of like helped players do without those in-game dashboards and statistics. That's why we felt a bit more comfortable with a little bit delaying them. But the upside of these kind of like two features taking a step back was the fact that we were able to focus on some very big and important things to us and to the community, such as property development, just the introduction of things like Spark and the resource token for building, and you know, advance more the concept of businesses. And you know, this is just to name a few. So we've seen some elements in the 2020 roadmap that were kind of like that were kind of like in red previously, now taking a big step towards green, and some of them may actually get deployed in 2020. So I think in that aspect, I would say I mean, to our own expectation, I think we have met or exceeded our own expectations in what we were able to deliver. I hope that the community sees that in the same way. But yeah, I think that's kind of like the big picture.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. And you know, I think one good example for players to keep in mind is, you know, we're building so much that they don't see yet, because so many of these mechanisms are complicated. And that's why this like property development sandbox is going to give them a taste of that, right? Instead of having to wait for the feature to be fully baked, and you know, for all the math to be mapped out, and for Spark to be working properly, and for the airdrop to be set up, and all of that, you know, we're going to give them something that we've put a lot of work into, and you know, they'll be able to play with it and understand how it's going to work. So, you know, if that's something that we can do for other features in the future as well, I think that'll be a really exciting thing for the community. You know, and that's one of the cool things about being a startup. You know, we're able to work on different features, release them in parts, right? And that's exactly what we did with Halloween. We got some 3D models going in there. We got some videos going in there that were associated with 3D models. We got costumes going, and you know, it was just a little taste, but it's an indicator of much bigger things to come, and that's what's so exciting about being able to kind of release in these increments and get the community, you know, engaged around the stuff that's being built.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe one word worth saying about, you know, the technological environment we're at. So again, people are not always aware of that, and you know, I think we do a good job of kind of like separating the blockchain from the UI and the UX and how everything works. But these are very complicated issues that we are handling that not a lot of people have solved, if at all, before us. And it's not like regular development where you hit some kind of, and by the way, good opportunity to shout out to our development team, who's doing an amazing, they're just doing a phenomenal job. And keep in mind, this is a scenario where you come across a barrier that nobody has ever come across, right? There's no like going on Google to find a solution. There's no such thing, right? You have to figure it out yourself. And it's primarily an undocumented environment, right? And in uncharted waters in even the types of problems you're trying to solve. So a lot of that, none of our players are kind of like have visibility to that. Neither they should, right? I mean, our players shouldn't care about the complexities of our technology, but this is something that demands a lot of resources on our side. But it also makes it super interesting as well.
Maybe to add on to this, we're very happy, for instance, concretely speaking, that we are on the EOS blockchain, which this really helps us to scale quite quickly and to keep the cost under control. We know, for instance, Ethereum's high gas cost these days, and throughput is not as much, especially when we think about when we open up Fresno, how actually fast properties were sold. I mean, that no way this could have happened on Ethereum. So that shows that we did the right choice here from technical perspective.
All right. So the next question I have here, this one's going to go to Dirk, and this is a little bit of an abstract question, but I think it's a really important thing for us to discuss. When will the Upland project go live fully? So that's the first part. And the second part is, will there be a big push to market it in Asia and the Middle East?
I think I partially answered both of those questions. So first of all, I think this live question probably refers to the question, because we always say we are in beta now. And this is, we cannot yet say when we're going to lift the beta completely, because we want to really make sure all the mechanics are in place. We understand the economy and everything is working. We're still testing a lot, so there's no definite answer to that question. I hope I understood the question correctly here, whether there was in that direction. And then the second question was, what was the second question again? I forget already.
When are we going to be expanding to Asia and the Middle East?
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, it's like every region. I said that already. We are investigating that a little bit. I mean, just very concretely, we are running some ads, we're doing some marketing, and of course, we're doing most of the stuff still in English. But this gives us already some feedback of the potentials in those different regions. But again, we don't have, honestly, we have not defined yet in which countries we're going to go next yet.
All right, Dirk, I got another one for you. I think you're going to enjoy this one. This one comes from user FocDodo. With the upcoming Apple glasses, have you considered building an AR world on top of the Upland metaverse?
Yeah, we're launching next week Apple glasses support. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, no. I mean, of course, as new technologies come up, we're going to take a look at them and how they work. I mean, we always shied away from the whole VR hype because still there needs to be lots of people using it. If Apple launches and when Apple launches the AR glasses, a super interesting concept. And of course, we have to have in mind that we are based on the real world, and you can come up with really new use cases and experiences for the players. But right now, it's very early to say when that exactly is going to happen. So.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm really glad someone asked that question. It's one of the concepts I think is so exciting about Upland's approach to digital property. And I say that because, it's one thing to build a platform that allows you to, let's say, place Pokemon or something in a visual space. But at scale, how do you determine who has the rights to put what where, right? There has to be an organizing mechanism and a mechanism that determines what's fair, who should be able to put what where, and what can they put where, what makes for a good augmented reality experience. And Upland is directly solving that problem. So as a base layer for an augmented reality metaverse, I just think the possibilities there down the line are really exciting. Even when it comes to partner integrations, right? If they were to leverage our map and our property system to build on top of that, I think there's really no limit to what we can build on the Upland metaverse.
Actually, it's a good point you mentioned here, John. I think in terms of the roadmap, right? We're talking to a couple of partners right now. Of course, the roadmap is then influenced, if a partner wants to work with us, who we're getting involved, right? So that is also something in the flux, which is a little bit driven from the outside. We strongly believe bringing in real world brands into Upland creates a very super exciting experience for the player.
Yeah. And I think this is an appropriate follow-up. Dirk, Don, any plans for the moon?
It's a real world, right?
The moon is real, and we haven't been there. So.
No, we're talking about Earth's metaverse. We're talking of the universe metaverse. No, I don't know. Yeah.
So to be determined. We'll have to compete with the Russian metaverse up there. Okay, let's see. And so we had one question from Dizzy Disky. Does Upland envision using oracles like Chainlink in the future to link in real life happenings to real-time features in the game? Interesting.
Question?
Actually, so the short answer is yes. I wouldn't say necessarily it depends on a specific oracle or a Chainlink or some other protocol or solution. But the idea that Upland ties to real events in the real world has crossed our minds. And actually, there's one even partnership we're working on right now that is very cool, but we're not ready to announce it yet. We hope it will materialize, that maybe somehow ties to those concepts. But yeah, it's a very interesting question, and I think it may become a reality.
So I know this question got submitted and was kind of embedded in a few others. It's getting bumped here. We will pay attention to it. Going back to Spark, does this mean that there is nothing for us to do right now to increase our initial Spark airdrop?
So anything we say right now is going to create havoc. So I think we should just, stick to what we've communicated up until now, and ask our players to have patience for the time that Spark, makes its debut.
All right, that makes sense. So we've said about as much as we can say for now on the subject of Spark. All right, the next question comes from Jim Juice. Have you guys ever toyed around with the idea of making fictional places? Now, Jim Juice, I was actually asking Idan and Dirk about this earlier because they've obviously planned a wide variety of different strategies that can end up being a part of this metaverse. And one thing that I think is really cool to keep in mind is as we develop the technology stack for the Upland metaverse, and the gamification, on a long enough timeline, it could also theoretically be applied to other worlds, right? Fantasy worlds of all types, right? If you think about sci-fi worlds or a Game of Thrones style world, there's different ways that these metaverses could play out in parallel to Upland, but they would not be Upland, right? So I know that's kind of an abstract answer there, but that's what we can give you right now when it comes to fictional places. Okay. And let's see, we jumped around here a little bit. I want to see if we had any more roadmap questions that we did not cover. I think that is about it. Now I am going to the Q&A questions that were submitted in here. Are there any that we didn't address there? All right, and for the people that are still listening, feel free to submit any other questions you would like us to answer. We have about 5 more minutes, and I'm just looking through the questions to make sure that we covered everything. All right, yeah, sorry guys, when it comes to dates, there's no specific dates that we can provide. We just try to keep everyone as updated as possible about the rough time frames. Things will be released. All right, I guess we're going to address this question directly from Kevin Kusela. How will the action look on the blockchain when someone buys property with Fiat? It's an interesting question.
Well, actually, you may be able to see that pretty soon with the first. We mentioned that the Tilia crew are going to perform the first Fiat purchase, so you'll just be able to see it for yourself. We absolutely had to kind of like develop further the way the marketplace transactions happen on the blockchain with Fiat. So you're going to have some very precise evidence for that with the first transaction.
Okay, gotcha. And let's see here. So I'm just scrolling up here. I know, Rakur, you have a question, but I can't find what it is. So you still need clarification on business licenses in the same city. I cannot find your question, Rakur. It was not in the Q&A section. Okay, we got 5 more minutes left. Are there any other questions people would like to submit right now live that we can address? Okay, Junjun asks, when will we get more information regarding Explorer backstories? So yeah, that was a feature that I thought was pretty exciting. I knew there'd be some questions about that one.
Yeah, so actually, it's a great question because we think as first of all, Block Explorer shops is probably one of the first, if not the first, businesses that happen in Upland. And as a first step to that, I want to be careful, but say that pretty soon we're gonna make the existing custom Block Explorers into NFTs that now their current owners will actually own as NFTs in Upland. As a part of that, we're going to introduce those type of backstories. And by the way, we call them block stories. So that's maybe a small reveal over here. So to your question, Junjun, this will happen pretty soon.
Okay, and sorry, just to go back to Recurrier's question then. I think we might have partially addressed this, but maybe not directly enough. Is there a way to have a business license with multiple locations in the same city, like a base license and adding additional locations for a fee or something like that?
We do not have plans for that. And again, we want to drive healthy competition in terms that, you know, we don't want somebody now to have a monopoly on a specific business and then spread it around the city. We think that somebody operating a business in one location is fine. And, you know, if they go to the length of getting multiple licenses and operating those, it's fine. It's an open market, right? People can do that. But we don't think it's necessary to allow people to open in the same city, multiple locations under the same license.
Gotcha. Makes sense to me. All right. And Nitrin is asking, when will Upland hold a real live meetup?
When will anyone hold
a real life meetup?
So somebody previously asked that a while ago, and I responded with hopefully Genesis Week 2021. But, you know, reality is, I don't want to say what it is, but again, hopefully when we're done with this COVID situation and it's safe enough to hold an in-person meeting, we are so definitely going to do that.
Yeah, we just got started, right? We had one meetup in London back in January, where we have the very early adopters of Upland there. Hopefully we can do, multiple cities things going forward. COVID holds us back a little bit, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I actually had an iconic venue in mind for where to do it in San Francisco, if we ever get to it.
Gotcha. So we have a couple of questions coming at the end here, but I know with a couple minutes left, Dirk, did you want to introduce any of the concepts around blockchain heroes and what we're going to be doing with them?
Yeah, actually, it's something that's going to come up very soon. As you know, we have a partnership with the Bad Crypto podcast, who also released a collectible cards game, which is called Blockchain Heroes. And we said, hey, why don't we join forces here in a certain sense? And the idea would be that we'll be using all the cool characters, possible characters we have as custom explorers. However, on a very high level, they can become a collectible card game. But, we want every Uplander who has a custom explorer give the opportunity to decide for himself if he wants to participate in that collectible card game or not. So we have a Blockchain Heroes headquarters in Merced Manor, because we ran this joint first partnership promo back, when was it? I think in June or so. So and we're going to have something else going on in that direction, because we're going to plan on launching something with the Blockchain Heroes early next year. And this, and as I said earlier, also will most likely be the first use case also where we're going to introduce maybe our NFT gateway. Plus, it will also include some of the external Spark acquisition possibilities. So that's all I can say right now. Stay tuned. We'll have some more detailed information coming up.
All right, and we have just hit the 90-minute mark. I know there were a couple more questions that came in.
Yeah,
we will.
I have one question I just saw that that we can address. Just to make sure, with the landmarks, right? So today you have a pin on the property where you can see the landmark tagging. The external zoom view, so the one similar to City Hall or the train stations where you see on a high zoom level from the map, that is going to happen once the landmark has been built. So let's say once somebody builds whatever, the ferry building, maybe in San Francisco, once the construction is complete, that's when you're going to see the landmark, dedicated landmark pin from a high zoom level, and not just the property pin that's existing right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, an important thing to clarify. Some people know how cool those landmarks are going to be and how important they are, and other people, because they don't see them yet, they don't get it. But that's going to be a huge part of the Upland map, and definitely something that attracts a lot of attention. All right, and I know there's a couple of last-minute questions that are coming in here. I think we can do our best to answer those on Discord. And as always, we try to provide the community with as much information as we can. We're often on Discord and participating in conversations with the users. We can get into the economics of things, feature updates, clarifying things. There's a number of things we love engaging the community with. We often, like I mentioned before, can't always get to the specifics of like dates, like launch dates, or specific numbers that will be a part of mechanisms, because those are usually things that get finalized a little bit more closely to the final launch date of features. So again, I want to thank everyone who participated in this AMA. We have 37 people on right now, but we've had that number go up and down during the course of 90 minutes. And we've had a ton of questions submitted on Discord earlier. A number of questions get submitted just while we were live here discussing things. And we touched on a wide variety of different subjects related to Upland, from future technologies that'll be integrated and experiences that will be unique to the future of Upland, to blockchain and some unique things that we're doing there. So I just want to thank everybody for participating in this and helping us have this really broad, yet the same in-depth and robust conversation about the future in Upland and everything that's going to be possible here. So that's it for my end again. My name is John, and on Discord, I am Block Unchained. We have Idan and Dirk here, two of the three founders of Upland, who are often on Discord as well. Did you guys have any final words for today's AMA?
Just
well,
one
John,
thing,
thank you.
Thank you for moderating, John. It was a great job, and we appreciate everybody that tuned in. I think this was the biggest AMA that we had live attendance in so far, which is very encouraging. We appreciate your questions. We try to answer them as to the best of our abilities. And again, we'll see you all on Discord.
All right.
Cool. Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, yeah.